What's up, it's Phil from Phil Will Expose. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about why I think that the barbell seated military press is the best shoulder pressing variation when it comes to building up bigger delts. Now, I know this is a very harsh statement on my part, but keep in mind, I have a lot of good reasons to back up what I'm saying. And I do think that every vertical pressing variation does have its place, does have merit, it does have its purpose. So, standing push press, standing strict, behind the neck push, everything has its place. But I'm going to talk about why I think that the seated is the most optimal for hypertrophy, in my opinion. Okay, first things first, I want to talk about bodybuilders because they have a very special and unique way of training where they manipulate certain variables to their favor in order to reach the one target goal, which is hypertrophy. It's muscle building, it's measurements, it's size, they're all about the look. They're really chasing aesthetics, and if they get stronger as a side effect, that's cool, but at the end of the day, they want to get the look going on, and they're going to manipulate certain variables in their training in order to hit the target muscle harder. So this is why when you look at a lot of bodybuilders train their shoulders, you'll rarely ever see them doing standing shoulder presses, maybe on certain rare occasions, but most likely they're doing some stuff seated. And this is no surprise. Arnold, Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, Johnny Jackson, Branch Warren, the list goes on. And even in the drug-free kingdom, you got guys like Chris Jones and a host of other YouTubers who are doing their seated shoulder presses. So why are these lifters doing their presses in a seated manner? It's because the seated military press is the single press that helps you go the heaviest in the strictest fashion. So you could always do more seated than you could standing in a strict manner. And the range of motion is still good. It takes the core out of the equation, and you're pretty much just getting a lot of shoulders with some heavy weights, which is pretty hard to argue with. Okay, so first things first, I want to talk about why you can go so heavy on the seated shoulder press over the standing version and how this is going to benefit you in building up bigger delts. So firstly, it's an eccentric based movement. That means that you get the lift off, or you lift it off yourself, and right away you're in the negative, so you get the stretch reflex faster, which enables you to lift heavier loads or get more reps, which are both good things for muscle building. Another benefit is that you got the pad, so you can really push your back against the pad, kind of like a bench press, helps you lift more weight. And also, since your feet and your glutes are on the floor, you get more leg drive. So when you're doing the standing version, you don't get as much leg drive. You could flex your quads, but when you're doing the seated version, you could really push the floor away from you, kind of like a bench press, and you could reap the same benefits. And it's very similar with the bench press. People are saying that it's the best chest builder of all time, and you could do all these things. Well, in my opinion, you could do all these things with the shoulder press, and that easily makes it one of the best shoulder builders of all time as well. Okay, so the second benefit to seated military press is that it's easier to get a lift off and it's easier to get a spot. So obviously if you're doing something like a heavy bench press, you retract your scapula, you get tight, you get set up, and then you get that lift off, and it helps you get into the right groove. And the same thing can be said about the seated military press, because you're getting set up, you're getting tight, and just that lift off alone, it helps you set up in the right position. Now, as far as the spotting is concerned, you can't really spot when you're doing a push press or when you're doing a standing strict press. It's very awkward, especially if your lifting partner is a lot shorter than you. So I personally think that if you have a spotter, it's a lot easier to push yourself to the limits. It's easier to get some extra reps, and even sometimes the partner could put some pinkies under the bar, help you crank out that extra rep. Okay, so the third benefit to seated military press is that it's easier on the lower back and it's easier to add bands onto the bar, at least in my opinion. So first off, if you're doing a lot of deadlifts, rack pulls, good mornings, and rows, some lifters may tend to complain about doing some extra strict presses because it may tap into the lower back recovery due to the heavy compressive loads. So in that case, you could pretty much play it safe while still hitting your shoulders by doing your stuff seated. Now, as far as the bands are concerned, I'm 5'11", and when I lock out the weights, I don't have any bands that are long enough to stretch that far. On the other hand, if I'm doing it seated, I could easily just grab 200-pound dumbbells, loop the band around onto the bar, and even when I lock it out, the band is long enough to fulfill that. Okay, so I just talked about the seated military press benefits, but now I want to talk about the common cons of the exercise, because every exercise does have its downsides. So first things first, people are going to say that you're in a seated position, therefore you're not maximally engaging your core, therefore it's not the best thing for athletic performance. And to that I have to say that it is true, but if you do read the title, we're talking about how to get bigger delts. We're not trying to be faster athletes, and we're not trying to be better on the field. We're just chasing the look for the most part, at least for the purposes of this video. So if you look at something like the bench press, you're not even seated on a bench with a pad, you're lying down on a bench with a pad. So it's not the best thing for your core either, but people are saying that it's the best chest builder of all time. And the same thing could be said about the seated military press. Now, as far as shoulder health is concerned, people are going to say that since you're sitting down and you have a pad behind you, it's not the best thing for your shoulders because your scapula can't move around freely. But this could easily be remedied by having a pad that's a lot shorter, that goes to your mid-back. So if your pad goes to your mid-back, your scapula can still move around freely, you can still lift heavy weights, and it's easier on the shoulders. Okay, so there you guys have it. In this video I talked about why the seated military press is my favorite variation for building up bigger delts. And I gave you the pros and cons, and that's not to say that I don't like the standing strict, standing push, or just behind the neck variations in general. I actually incorporate all these in my programming, and I think that they all hit the delts very effectively. But if you were to narrow it down and tell me what my favorite press was, I would for sure say the seated military press. So I want to know in the comment section below, what are your thoughts on the seated military press, and what's your favorite shoulder pressing variation when it comes to building up bigger delts? I really want to know. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you guys next time.